Hello and welcome to Blank First Page. My name is Lucas. In this video, I'm going to show you the notebook-based system that I use that has allowed me to save upwards of 30% of my income every month for the last 15 or so years. So I will start off with the notebook mechanics of how this works because it is incredibly simple. And then later on in the video, I'm going to talk about why this works. The only physical things we're going to need for this system are a pocket notebook and a writing instrument. I've got here a field notes, obviously. It has to be pocket-sized. Doesn't have to be a notebook, it can just be some paper stapled together, but it has to be something that you can fit in a pocket and keep on your person at all times. I'm going to use a pencil now just because I haven't written with a pencil in a while, but for this whole system you want to have a dedicated pen of some sort which you can carry around with you at all times, just like you carry around your notebook. I love this Kaweco Lilliput Mini, I think it is, because it is tiny, it's just a click pen and fits in a front pocket very discreetly and unobtrusively. So here's how we set the notebook up. This is a fresh field notes. Obviously, we leave a blank first page. And we're going to start off with pay. I'm going to use round numbers here just to make it easy. You start this page on your payday. This is going to be a basic income statement for your own personal finances. Next, I'm going to list down a few types of expenses that I have, some of which I know the amounts in advance, like rent. It's always the same every month. Other things I'm not going to know, like certain utility bills, but I'm going to list them anyway, and then we fill them in later once we know the actual expense. So I've got my rent. Now I'm coming to the bills. I've got water and electricity, which are going to always be variable, so I'll just list them as lines without a associated expense. There could be a few other things, for example, internet and cell phone plan, which I might know are going to come. But especially if this is the first time I'm doing it, there's likely to be a bunch of expenses that are on kind of direct debit out of my bank account that I'm not sure exactly when they arrive, how much they are. So I'll just leave some space for those things to be recorded when they happen, but I'm not going to worry about trying to figure that all out right now. This will organically come together. So I'm going to label that automatic, as in automatic expenses, and I'll leave just a bit of space so I can fill them in as they come in. This will be things like Netflix subscription, Audible, insurance bills, whatever, just stuff that I signed up for a while ago and I don't actually know when it does come out of my account or how much does get pulled out. And then I've got a line which I call living, which will just be a tally of the weekly expenses, which we'll talk about next. So I'll set these up to indicate that there's information missing. And then the structure of this small income statement that we've put together is obviously I've got my pay, which is the primary source of income at the top. I'm going to have a set of expenses, which I will, at the end of the month, tally up, and the pay minus my total expenses gives me my savings or my disposable income, what have you. That's page one, the income statement done. In the next page, I'm just going to set up a place where for the next 4 or 5 weeks, however many weeks there happen to be in that particular month, I can record the full tallied sum of that particular week. So let's say I'm just doing this in January. So for now, that second page is set up and it'll make a bit more sense in a minute after I explain this next step, which is the weekly expense page. Just a note in terms of the cycles of all of this, I'm talking about it in terms of the calendar months, simply because I tend to get paid in the last week of the month, which makes it neat that the first week that I'm listing here is the start of the next month. But that's just my particular circumstance. You can adapt this to your situation. So for example, if you're paid in the middle of the month, you'd have January week 3 and 4 as the first 2 weeks, and then February week 1 and 2 to represent the second 2 weeks of your kind of pay cycle. So these are the 3 pages that I set up on payday, and from the Monday of the next week I start writing down every single expense that I make as soon as I make it. So now that the setup in the notebook is complete with these 3 pages, here's the actual process of how this lives with you day to day. Every expense that I make, as soon as I make it, it gets listed on this page. A simple description of what the expense actually is, one by one, and the exact amount next to it. As you go through the week, you keep writing this until you come to the final tally at the end of the week. I circle it to make it official. It's good to have these kind of routines that mark specific points in the process. So I circle it and I transfer over. I'll typically do this tallying process on a Sunday night. And once I've completed this and filled in the amount on the second page, I set up the next week's page, ready for that week's expenses. So just a quick note on the habit which goes into writing down each expense as it happens. The rule has to be that as soon as the expense is made, you write it down. In order to give yourself a good chance of forming the habit, you need to break down the action into a super manageable, low friction task. So writing a single description and a single cost is a 5 to 15 second task. So as the weeks go on in that month, I'm filling in the expenses and we transfer over every week to our second page. So then at the end of the month, I've got another tally to write down here. And then we move backwards a step again and we take that final tally and we add it to this living line. So now what about these other expenses that we left blank? So these could be occurring at any time of the month, and we're not necessarily opening up, say, the banking app to check if an expense has come in that month. So all we're doing in the weekly expenses are recording the expenses that we are making ourselves so that we know there's a trigger. I'm buying something, I'm making a purchase, expense recorded. At the end of the month, when I'm going through this process of tallying all this up, moving back to the income statement, that is my nudge to open up my banking app and look for these expenses. There may be bills that I need to pay, so I might have had my water and electricity bill come through, internet and cell, let's say, and then I will have noticed that there's, the Netflix subscription came out, and so did my Audible. So I tally those up and I've got them in my full list. Now I have a full accounting of every type of expense that I made this month. And once again, I just add it all up. So the key piece of information I have at the end of the first month is how much money did I actually end up saving? What is my now discretionary spending money? Now, if you're just starting with this process, I wouldn't try to draw any particular conclusions and try to analyze this information that you have too much. The main thing is now to stick with it and try and get a cycle of 3 months through. So doing this whole cycle 3 times, because then you'll have a good representation of your actual spending. And 3 months, different bills will come in. And over the course of 3 months, you'll have a good opportunity to capture all the types of bills and expenditures that you will undertake. So what do you need for the system to work? So the first 2 things I've mentioned, a pocket notebook and a pocket appropriate pen. Those are the things that are most accessible for the system, very easy to procure both these things. But the next 2 things I'm going to talk about are a bit more difficult. Obviously, if you found this video in the first place and made it this far into the video, you've got some idea of why you want to get involved with a process like this and why you want to track your finances. And that reason is going to be very unique to yourself, and it's going to be very personal. It might be saving up for a deposit on a house, buying a car, going on more holidays, becoming financially independent, paying off debt, whatever. Doesn't matter what the reason is, so long as you actually have a reason. And you need a reason because that's how the motivation to take on this process is going to sink in. So take 5 minutes, close your eyes if you have to, and just think about what is the fundamental reason you want to track your finances and save more. Once you've got the idea in your head, express it in simple words and write it down. First, if you're not already a pocket notebook carrying person, you're just going to have to become one. When you leave the house, your new mantra needs to be wallet, phone, keys, notebook, pen. And the other habit is writing the expenses as soon as they happen. I'm mentioning this again because it is so important to this process. You will not successfully form the same habit if you say, well, I'll just do it once a day. I'll tally up my expenses daily or weekly. It just won't work because it's too vague of a self-instruction doing it at the end of a day or at the end of the week, because there are too many variables that you have to agree with yourself on. If it's at the end of the day or at the end of the week, you have to think about what time, where, are you always reliably in a certain place to be able to do that? All these sort of things. With the rule we spoke about, it's just the notebook is with you, the pen is with you. When you spend, you write it down. Simple and unreliant on various other circumstances. So why does this system actually work? 2 reasons: observation and friction. Observation influences behavior. The simple act of observing something influences that thing. This is almost a fundamental law of nature. This idea is also used as a weight loss technique, where the only thing you have to do is weigh yourself every day and take note of it. No gym subscriptions, nothing else. The simple act of observing your weight will make you watch your weight. And your behavior changes in subtle ways because you know you're weighing yourself the next day. You hesitate before that second ice cream, or you park a bit further away from your house and you take a bit of a longer walk. This is the exact same principle. Knowing that after every expense you make, you write it down, you might think twice about buying the 6th espresso of the day. And the beauty of this system is that, just like with the weight loss part where you don't have to subscribe to a gym or take other intentional steps, the behavior change just happens day to day. You'll find results from this just by writing down the expense as it happens and nothing else. Now, after 3 months, 6 months of using the system, you're going to have a good set of data in your income statement and in the weekly expenses, which you can now start going through in case you want to actively make a change. So putting all the subconscious changes to the side, you might actually want to re-engineer where you spend your money or budget for the future. Now again, that is a highly personal process. If I'm looking to save money, I might be happy to cut down on my takeout expense, but you might be happier cutting your Netflix subscription, for example. This method is set up in a way that it caters to all. So you have the information there. You now are armed with the ability to assess where you want to make those changes. Now, the last reason this works is because of friction. So this is, by design, a much more physical and involved process than any app on your phone can offer. I know there are apps that budget for you, that nudge you in all sorts of ways, and that can spit out fantastic looking reports to analyze your expenditure for you, but that is too low friction. It is too easy. There's no skin in the game from yourself in the actual process. We're introducing that skin in the game by having it be a physical process of writing something down. That gets us involved in the process and gets us committed to it. Your phone you carry around with you anyway, but if you're carrying around a pocket notebook specifically because you want to save more, that is much more of a physical reminder of what you're trying to do. So I hope this helps you. I've used this system myself for the last 15 years. I've moved countries 6 times and set myself up every time using nothing more than this system to track and manage my expenses. This has helped me stay on top of things and, most importantly, save along the way. If you find some value in this, please like and subscribe. And if you have a different way you use your notebook to manage your personal finances, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.